reparations comes from CRT.
Yeah, of course. Yes, of course. I believe in reparations for people that are
so
in a
I, white man, have to play for black people. Why?
Wow, that's a really selfish thing you just said.
Hold on. Why?
Instead, we have students fighting for reparations. That's not going to change a thing. It's not going to change a thing.
Also, I know that like one of the stances you take against is against critical race theory.
Yes, that's right.
What's your opinion on that? And like, just tell me what you think about it and what it
CRT is repugnant racism.
Repugnant racism. Okay, can you go more into that? And why?
If you read Richard Delgado's Intro to Critical Race Theory, he believes that racism is normative. It's everywhere. It exists just as people exist. They believe skin color matters. I do not.
Yes.
I don't believe skin color means anything towards your value or to whose you are as a human being. I care about your character, your code of conduct, and your soul, not your skin color.
That's a fair thing to believe in, but critical race theory believes that as well. It goes for the equality of races. All it does is teach the history of. I know.
So I'm actually very excited to watch this video. I'm assuming the student will be debating critical race theory as well as racial structures within the United States. I'm LFR JoJo. I am a college student studying electrical engineering right as we speak. So I'm not really super in tune with the political side of college studies. I don't know what he learned, but I do know a little bit about Charlie Kirk, and I have been learning a lot as the time progresses. So I'm not going to waste any more time. I'm going to get right into it. Let's go.
I know this because I do.
Okay, so tell me, what does Richard Delgado argue in the Intro to Critical Race Theory as applicable policy reforms for structural and systemic racism?
Sir, you can't expect me to argue for something that I haven't learned yet.
No, I know.
If you let me
it's a little unfair for what I'm doing, but it is Intro to Critical Race Theory is his book.
Okay, but not every class is taught like that.
Fair enough.
For instance, my class is called Race and Ethnicities, and right now we're going into the history of race and how, like, white people are systemically privileged.
So let me ask you a question. White people are not privileged, but let me ask you a question. Do you believe in black-only dormitories?
Black-only dormitories. What does that have to do with the conversation of critical race?
Because as a solving to racism on over 100 universities across the country, there are black-only dormitories. Is that good, bad, evil, wrong? What's your opinion?
I'm sorry, sir, but that's not part of the question I asked you.
Well, no, I'm asking you a question. It should be very simple. Black-only spaces, white-only spaces, good or bad?
I mean, sir, there are safe spaces for individuals.
Okay, so you're pro-segregation.
I always wonder what the term safe space meant, because I've been in college for a while now. I actually already graduated my undergrad with an engineering degree, and I'm getting a master's degree right now. And I graduate in a few months, by the way, and I'm finishing faster. So I've been taking 18 credits for years at this point. I've never felt unsafe around white people. I've never felt unsafe around Asian people, Indian people, African American people. I've never felt unsafe because of someone's race. So the reason I'm bringing that up is because you say safe space. I wouldn't need a safe space away from white people. It never crossed my mind. I don't feel like they're a threat, and I hope they wouldn't feel like I'm a threat. It's just you're a human. I feel like, oh, you're normal. It is what it is.
I'm not pro-segregation because guess what, sir? You cut me off. So,
just answer the question. It's super easy, man, but I'll give him a chance. White-only spaces, black-only spaces, yes or no?
There are fine with spaces where there should be a
Let him finish.
It's bad if it's forced. Just say yes or no. Bad if it's forced.
So whites are not allowed into the black spaces.
What? Here, let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question.
Forced.
Let me ask you a question. Say for instance, there's a club. There's a club that is aimed towards these people. And also, I've never been a part of one of these clubs where they've excluded anyone, turned off the camera. Anyway, so there are
camera's still on.
Yeah, well, it's not this. Anyway, it's okay for these spaces to exist as a safe space. It's okay for these spaces to exist.
So just make sure we're clear. So when the South had white-only restrooms, that was fine.
No, it wasn't.
That's exactly what we have on 100.
If it's not forced, it's not bad. It's
Hold on,
okay
it's
to be
forced
safe amongst your people. And why would you want to be in a space that is taught to, like, it's like for people. It's for people to accept their culture.
Wait a second. So it plays into this false narrative that black people are threatened by white people. Are they?
That's not.
Does the presence of white people threaten black people?
You've strayed very far from the critical race
No,
theory
this is
question.
all what CRT
and
believes
this is
in.
what you are about,
If
sir.
you read Richard Delgado's
You
Intro to
put
Critical Race
power
Theory,
words that catch people off guard.
no,
when they've come to go to one question.
It's not a trick.
It is a trick.
If you read
Your
the literature.
it exists as
Okay,
a
so let me
trick.
ask you a question. In Richard Delgado, in any one of these guys, right? Nicole Hannah-Jones, you read any of their literature, Ibram X. Kendi, Harry Rogers, what is their opinion of black-only dormitories?
I do not know their
They're in
opinions,
favor
sir.
of them. CRT argues for black-only spaces and white-only spaces. Is that evil or is that good?
It's a broader question than that.
It is repugnantly evil to
Just
segregate
like you
people
say
based
that,
on race.
Hey, just
you
like
don't have
you
to
say
overthink
I'm
it.
avoiding a question, you avoid them just as
what
well.
question am I avoiding?
Just because you have a little assembly over there.
What question am I avoiding?
Assembly over here too.
Wait, what question am I avoiding?
You're avoiding the question of why critical race theory is bad.
Because CRT argues for black-only spaces
But
and
I'm
white-only
saying
spaces.
It's a broader thing than that. They're not just arguing to separate people.
That's
They're
one of
arguing
many things
for
they're arguing.
Teaching the history of race and what it's done to our society.
First of all, they don't
throughout
teach it correctly.
history.
Secondly, the extrapolation is they actively argue for discrimination against white
I'm sorry,
people.
you say they didn't teach it correctly.
Yes, that's correct.
Why don't they teach it
Well, let's take
correctly?
one example. Nicole Hannah-Jones, the 1619 Project. She has been obliterated by fellow liberal scholars as making up history, revisionist history, not using original source documents,
Making up what kind of history, may I ask?
not quoting the founding fathers correctly, not using original source documents, using a motive type methodology. The 1619 Project is a joke by any academic discipline.
Do you feel it's not fair?
So I actually looked up the definition of critical race theory, and I'm going to read it right from my phone. I'm not going to change one word because these people, they are going at each other. This student is going at Charlie. Charlie is going at him. Charlie said critical race theory is bad because it promotes all black spaces. The student said that is not true. That's not what critical race theory is. So I'm going to read it. Critical race theory is an academic framework that examines how racism is embedded within laws, policies, institutions, arguing that systemic racism exists beyond individual prejudice and contributes to racial inequalities in society, often focusing on the idea that race is a social construct and not solely based on biology. It's primarily used in legal studies to analyze how legal systems perpetuate racial disparities. So what this definition means is that race is embedded within our day-to-day society, meaning race is embedded within our laws, race is embedded into our housing, our hospitals, our transportation systems. That's what this definition means. Meaning, or it implies that in order to get away from this disparity that African Americans face, there has to be places that we can go to where these disparities don't exist. Because this definition argues that racism is embedded within everything in society. So if we want to escape this racism, we would have to enter into a space that is not welcomed by society or not open to society. Hence, an all black space. Although the definition doesn't explicitly say critical race theory supports all black spaces, it is pretty logical to conclude that's what the definition implies. So I understand why Charlie Kirk said that. I really do. And I'm not saying that because I'm a fan of his or I'm not. I really do understand why he said that. It makes sense. I do want to see how the student responds and how he's able to elaborate though.
To judge an entire thing by one scholar.
Nicole Hannah-Jones is the leading CRT scholar in America, christened by the New York Times.
And there's always
how about this?
leading people.
How about Ibram X. Kendi, Harry Rogers? How about him, who's the second in command of the CRT regime? How about you pick one and I'll dissect it?
I don't know any currently critical.
Bingo, because you don't know very much about the
Critical
topic.
race theory has only existed for a little amount of time, less than other classes.
Okay.
We know less about it and we're still researching it. Just like any other field of
But,
study, we
don't-
research it to get a better point.
Read the literature. The undercurrent of all CRT literature, whether it be Delgado, whether it be Nicole Hannah-Jones or Ibram X. Kendi, whether it be Marcuse or Derrida or Foucault or any of the postmodernists, they believe race matters, and you actively must construct society around race using power dynamics. Actively anti-white discrimination, anti-white sort of practices, affirmative action if necessary, black-only dormitories, black-only graduation ceremonies, black-only hiring practices. They believe race matters. In fact, that is Cornel West's book he wrote that says race matters. So where am I off stray in summarizing CRT? I've read the literature. I encourage you to too.
I will say, you're very educated on these people that have written books.
I know.
Yeah.
This is what I do for a living.
I know it's what you do.
I read their books, so I know what this stuff is.
Yes, I know you do. But it is wrong to judge a subject. Like, there is no hateful dialect in the class.
I'm not saying it's hateful. I'm saying...
Yes, you are.
Well,
you are saying that the things that they teach are inherently hateful.
Of course they are. If you are saying that blacks should have their own bathrooms and whites should have their own bathrooms, you are no better than a KKK leader in the 1950s.
Hey, you just said the critical race series that are taught here on campus are not hateful.
The CRT...
That destroys the argument that you're speaking, that critical race series spread to turn
the fact
people
you
against
cannot
white people.
speak against black-only dormitories shows the toxicity of CRT.
Well, you're bringing up a buzz term that is a
It's
very
not a buzz
big
term.
subject
It's a real
as small
example.
question. You're bringing up in a discussion.
It's happening in real time.
If I came up here and said,
It's
"Hey,
not
I
some
want to
academic
talk,"
thing.
Listen, people doing black-only dormitories. That is a subject in itself. That is a question I could have came up and asked, and we could have discussed that. I did not. For instance, you used it as an argument. Okay, use it as an argument. Do not make it your main point.
But it is an example of why
in,
CRT is a toxin.
But you've turned it into your main point. This is like one of the only things you brought up. And yes, I get that I get that you could see hateful rhetoric.
Let me ask you another. Let me ask you another example. Okay.
Sure.
Should black people get reparations?
Should black people get reparations? I believe they should.
Okay. So let me ask you. So, a black person that came here in the 1980s, are they entitled to reparations? They came from Nigeria or Dominican Republic.
May I ask you a question, sir? Because no,
reparations comes from CRT.
Yeah, of course. Yes, of course. I believe in reparations for people that are in a
I, white man, have to play for black people. Why?
Wow, that's a really selfish thing you just said.
Hold on. Why?
There was this young man who was a student athlete, and he was about to graduate. And this young man, a young African American man, 17 years old, got the highest SAT in his entire school. Got the highest SAT, student athlete, obviously very smart. You got the best in your entire school. And the day before, I believe he was supposed to graduate, he dissed his ops. And he ended up getting unalived, murdered. Yeah, he got murdered. The day before or a few days before he was supposed to graduate. Dude had the highest SAT in his entire school. Student athlete, had his future set up for him, but he decided to jump on a rap song and diss a few people in his neighborhood, and he got unalived. African American man. The reason I'm bringing this up is not to expose him, say he should have done this, should have done better. I'm bringing this up to expose things that happen in the black community. We talk about reparations. We talk about, oh, white people did this to us. They did that to us. Society is holding me back. But then when we look at our own neighborhood, the stuff we accept, that's normal, right? We think it's normal to diss your ops every time that you have a problem. We think it's normal to be smoked up, drugged up, leaned up every time you go somewhere, popping perks every time you go somewhere. We think that's normal. We think it's normal to have face tats at the age of 14, 15. We think it's normal to drop out of school. We think it's normal to sag our pants everywhere we go. We think it's normal. We think it's normal to fail classes. We think it's cool. There's actually studies shown that in black schools, your popularity has a disproportionate relationship with your grades. That's cool, right? We think that's cool. But then when we're the poorest in the country, when we're the last place, we're the lowest marriage rates in the country, we blame the white people. It's white people's fault. It's white people's fault. They did this to us. They did that to us. We need reparations. Then what? What's going to happen if they give us reparations? What are we going to buy? We going to buy shoes, Jordans, chains. We going to buy some new chains. We going to look so fly. Then what? We not going to buy properties. We not going to buy stocks. That we focus on being cool. We focus on being fly. We focus on getting the new shoes. We the best in basketball. Hey. We iced out. That's what we focus on. So I'm tired of these stupid conversations, taking money from other hardworking Americans to give it to reparations, bruh. It's not gonna fix nothing. Let's be honest. We gotta fix our mindset if we want any success in this country. We gotta fix our mindset. But instead, we have students fighting for reparations. That's not gonna change a thing. It's not gonna change a thing. I'm just being real.
Why should I
That's
have,
a really non-empathetic thing to
wait,
say.
why should I have
Not
empathy
caring
for a
about
race?
people.
Why should I have empathy for a race? I have white guilt because I breathe?
I'm not saying for you to...
Why should the white students here have to work harder to pay for black kids?
You wanted to ask
What is that all about?
Yeah.
Like, what did we do to have to pay for black kids?
It would have been easier to give reparations back when slavery was abolished. Of course, it would be harder now. Do you think that people today, white people, benefited from their families owning slaves?
No.
Well, it is proven that people that do have slaves in their family are better off today.
So how did my family benefit when they fought in the Civil War to free the slaves?
Did they fight
On the Union cause. On the
on.
Union cause. So how did my family benefit from that?
Well, your benefit didn't. Your family didn't benefit.
Oh, but you said white people, so that's a big
I
statement.
said slave owners, and you heard me say slave.
No, hold on. We got to get more nuanced here. So there were tens of millions of white people that came post-slavery. How did they benefit? Via immigration. So like an Irish immigrant in 1905 benefited from slavery. How?
They didn't benefit from slavery.
So then how did by the way, the slave owners had their plantations burned to the ground by the North. Many of them had to stand for war crimes. Many of them lost everything. For good reason, they owned slaves. This idea that they had like an uninterrupted privilege walk for 150 years, that's not true.
I sure hope you're as passionate about talking about them being charged for war crimes as you are for other people in other countries.
And I'm sure hope that you're as passionate talking about critical race theory and how much money the black community should get from the white community as you are to point out the little serial killers we have running around urban black cities. I sure hope you're as passionate. I really do. I sure hope you're this passionate when you come to our high dropout rates, our high rates in not choosing careers like STEM or careers like medicine, and then complain that doctors don't know how to treat black people because they're racist. I sure hope you're as passionate. I sure hope you go into them classrooms and you're this passionate when you see black boys playing on their iPhones in the back of class or watching Kai Cenat in the back of class rather than paying attention. I sure hope you're this passionate. I sure hope you're this passionate when you hear little black boys, little black girls dissing each other on Twitch, on TikTok, on YouTube. And I hope you're this passionate, right? Ask yourself a question. There are scholarship funds specifically for the black community. I'm gonna be real with y'all. I'm gonna be 100% real. There are scholarship funds just for black people. Just for black people. That means if you are not black, you cannot apply to this. Ask yourself this. Why are these scholarship funds reaching out saying that not enough black students are applying? Why isn't any black advocate looking at that? Why aren't you raising hell for that? Why aren't you raising hell for that? You raise hell against a white guy trying to provide for his family. Raise hell for that. Why aren't we applying to these scholarships? Why do we have higher dropout rates? Why do we have higher wedlock rates? Children out of wedlock. Why? Why do we have the lowest marriage rates and they're getting lower? Why do we make the least? Why do we spend the most? Why do we have the most shoes, the most clothes, the most diamond chains, the most earrings, but the lowest savings accounts, the lowest investment portfolios? Why? Why aren't you talking about this? But you're talking about Charlie Kirk and your white classmates being the reason that black people can't get ahead in life.
Were tried for war crimes. That's why the part of the 14th Amendment was passed to try Southern
because not every black person has lineage connected to slaves.
That's
and
true.
Every white person doesn't have lineage connected to slaves.
Yes, that's right. So since every black person doesn't have a lineage connected to slaves, why should we generalize and say reparations for black people?
Because there are people that are in a worse place because their family was brought here as slaves, kept in sharecropping.
Got it. So over 150 years, they didn't have any ability to make better decisions, to save money, and to invest. It was such a big deal.
Are you blaming a person for being stuck in
Yes.
indentured servitude?
I'm blaming people for
You're
acting
telling
poor.
me if
Yes.
you were an indentured servant, you could rise to the top
So
where you...
let me ask you, how did the Jews get so wealthy
you were-
post-Holocaust?
Sir,
How did the Jews get so wealthy? How did the Asians get so wealthy?
you're bringing in really hateful dialect.
No,
Sir,
factual dialect,
Sir.
because you don't like it. The Asians
You
were
don't like
the
the
Asians
things
were
that I'm
internment camps.
saying.
The Asians were put in internment camps, and they were the poorest group in America. And guess what? They're the richest in America now. The Jews had an extermination act against them in the Holocaust. They had nothing. Everything was stolen, and now they're the richest per capita in the Western world.
Okay.
Why?
America was built by
Because
slaves.
they worked hard and they kept the family unit together. Blacks did that to the 1960s, and they stopped doing it.
This is incredibly racist.
It's a fact. It's not racist. It's
You're
not.
blaming black people for
No,
being put down
I'm not blaming.
for centuries.
I'm noticing. Blacks started having out of wedlock marriage births, and that is why black people remain poor.
Yeah,
Asians
you know
don't
what
do
I
that.
noticed?
Jews don't do
You
that
know what
as much.
I noticed? I noticed redline. I noticed the separations between neighborhoods where only people of the Caucasian race could live there, and only people
So why is
of
it
black race
that
could live
blacks
here.
were getting wealthier when all that stuff was getting passed in the 50s?
It wasn't.
What was
per
the
capita.
what was the single motherhood rate in
US strayed very- again,
1963?
very
How
far
many
from the
blacks had
conversation
fathers
of
around in
reparations.
1965? How many blacks?
I love how they frown when I'm getting you.
75% of blacks. 75% of blacks had dads around in 1975. Now 20% have it. That's not because of white men or white supremacy. It's because blacks started to abandoning the women they impregnated. And that's their fault, not the white man's fault. That's not.
That's a fact. I'm gonna be real with y'all, bro. Having a great father was one of the best things that could have ever happened to me, because I don't know my grandfathers. I don't know none of them, because they abandoned my grandmothers. And that one thing, I'm not gonna say the one thing, but my grandmother grew up in poverty. Well, my parents grew up in poverty because their fathers weren't around. Neither my mom's dad wasn't around. My dad's dad definitely wasn't around. They've abandoned. And it all started with a man abandoning a woman he got pregnant. It happened in my family. And I'm not speaking from hypotheticals like Charlie Kirk. I'm talking about my life. That affected my parents, and that affected me, the way they raised me. Because my dad didn't grow up with a father, and my mom didn't grow up with a father. You think that didn't impact the way they view life? You think it definitely impacted how much money they had? So this is not a game, bro. This is real life. And if we listen to what Charlie Kirk is saying, I promise we'd be in a better place. If we spent less money on commercial goods, if we didn't abandon families that we decided to create, if we decided to settle down, live in one house, do what we're supposed to do, be frugal spending, go to school or get a trade, just get a job, do something. Don't get too much debt, have a nice household, we would be better. Our community would be better. And I'm speaking from my personal life. I'm not speaking from any hypothetical or what this young man is talking about. I'm speaking from me, real life. I'm not playing. But let me know what y'all think in the comments below. Let me know if y'all agree. It's LFR JoJo, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.